Now you're live, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Erica. Good morning. Recognizing a quorum, I am calling this meeting of the Cannabis Control Commission to order at 10:01 a.m. on September 24th, 2020. This meeting is being recorded. My best wishes for the health and safety of everybody who has joined this meeting remotely. We have only one agenda item today. If we can get the agenda up, please, Erica. Thank you. Which is to discuss and vote on modifications to our draft regulations on delivery. Before I turn it over to Commissioner McBride to begin this discussion, I have a few brief comments. First, for context, let me remind everybody why we're here today. Even I have a hard time keeping all the meetings and dates straight in my head. But just for context, we approved draft regulations as commission on the 20th of July of this year. We promulgated those draft regulations shortly thereafter and started a public comment period that included a public hearing on the 3rd of August and a joint meeting with the Cannabis Control Commission and the Cannabis Advisory Board on the 17th of August. We had a policy discussion on the 28th of August based upon the feedback we got from the public comment period, the public hearing, our joint meeting with the advisory board. And during that policy discussion, we agreed on adding a new license type for delivery. Commissioner McBride graciously volunteered to lead drafting regulations consistent with the policy discussion that we made, and I'm sure she's going to thank all the others that were involved in that, but I personally wanted to thank Commissioner McBride for her leadership and her gracious volunteering to lead the drafting. We are here today to discuss and vote on those draft regulations that reflect the policy decisions that we made on the 28th of August. Going forward, we will, excuse me a sec. Going forward, when we first did our draft regulations back in July, there were some changes to our delivery regulations, and during the public comment period, we did receive significant comment on delivery. The changes that we are voting on today, though, are substantive enough that we feel it is imperative to solicit and consider additional public comment on these specific changes. And so we will begin after our vote today another public comment period. Details will follow on the exact timing of that, but we will meet again on the 19th of October to discuss the feedback that we receive in this public comment period and to discuss whether we feel any changes are necessary to be made to our draft regulations based upon that feedback. And then on the 29th of October, we will vote on all of our final regs, including the changes to the delivery regulations. My intent today is to have one vote on the entirety of the proposed changes that we're discussing today. But prior to taking that vote, we'll have a discussion as well as the opportunity for my fellow commissioners to introduce motions, if they so wish, to modify Commissioner McBride's draft. And then we'll take a vote on the entirety of that draft, including whatever motions have been approved. Finally, I want to again thank Commissioner McBride for her leadership here. She's shown an incredible amount, as she always does, of hard work, diligence, a passion for getting things right. It is evidenced by the fact that she plans on introducing some motions to her own draft of these regulations, which she was apologizing for. I, on the other hand, thought it was actually a complete testimonial to the way she works, which is that she worked and completed the draft, submitted it to her fellow commissioners, but didn't stop and kept working on them and thinking about it and focusing on getting them right. And so she has a few motions that she'll introduce to reflect that dedication. So I want to thank Commissioner McBride for her leadership, but I also want to say, and it takes nothing away from her leadership, to point out that whatever decisions we ultimately make today on delivery, those decisions, the implementation and the outcomes are the responsibility of the entire commission. So thank you again, Commissioner McBride, and if you're ready, let me turn it over to you to introduce the topic.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I wanted to start off by thanking the writing team who worked with me on putting together these recommendations and this draft. and that is Rebecca Lopez, Kyle Potvin, Tim Barwise, Matt Giancola, and Adriana Campos. This team worked efficiently and effectively, and this draft really does reflect a lot of collaboration on a fairly tight timeline, but a lot of really thoughtful collaboration. So I'm just want to give my appreciation to that team and all of the hard work that they did and have done on this, and probably are going to do in the next couple of weeks as we receive public comment. And I think, you know, they're a microcosm of the larger commission and the work that our staff does every day. So I greatly appreciate all of their contributions to what we're going to talk about today. Next slide, please. So what we are doing with these regulations is to create 2 delivery license types. And so the first is the limited delivery license, which takes the place of what we had previously called delivery only. And the second is the creation of a wholesale delivery license. So I want to just walk through the definitions of those 2 licenses first, because I think that provides some context, but also point out that in addition to these definitions, that we have included several other new definitions or modified our existing definitions within this draft. And I'm sure that as we go through that my colleagues will have questions, or if they do have questions, we can talk about those definitions as they come up. But to start, just talk about the 2 license type definitions. So the marijuana limited delivery licensee or limited delivery license means an entity that is authorized to deliver finished marijuana products, marijuana accessories, and branded goods directly to consumers from a marijuana retailer, or directly to registered qualifying patients or caregivers from an MTC, but is not authorized to sell marijuana or marijuana products directly to consumers, registered qualifying patients or caregivers, and is not authorized to wholesale, warehouse, process, or repackage. And then the wholesale delivery license definition, the marijuana wholesale delivery license definition, it means an entity authorized to wholesale and warehouse finished marijuana products acquired from a marijuana cultivator, marijuana product manufacturer, micro business, or craft marijuana cooperative, and sell and deliver finished marijuana products, marijuana accessories, and marijuana branded goods directly to consumers. A marijuana wholesale delivery license shall not be considered to be a marijuana retailer under 935 CMR 500.002 definitions, or 935 CMR 500.050 marijuana establishments, and shall be subject to 935 CMR 500.0501B control limitations. It's this definition I actually have my first motion on, making an addition, a clarifying addition to this, but just we can, I guess, take that up in due course as the chair determines. But I think that laying the groundwork to have those definitions in the record is really important at this point in time. So what we've done, in addition to creating those 2 license types, is also to establish new fee structures, to require warehousing for wholesale delivery licensees, to authorize white labeling for wholesale delivery licensees. We're defining specific operational requirements that will be in addition to the general operational requirements. And we are amending existing relevant regulations to incorporate the license types and the activities that they can undertake as part of those license types. And that will include in our application requirements, our general operational requirements, security, and also the general requirements in 145, which I neglected to include in this list, but applies to both limited delivery licensees and to wholesale delivery licensees. Next slide, please. So within the definitions that I just read, there are a couple of different prongs that differentiate these 2 license types. But to outline the basics, under a limited delivery license, This isn't much of a change at all from the delivery only license that had been included in our regulations last year. So what you can do under this license, or what we're proposing you be able to do, is deliver finished marijuana products from retailers, deliver finished marijuana and marijuana products from MTCs, and deliver marijuana accessories and branded goods, which may come from either the limited delivery licensee, the MTC, or the retailer. And so those branded goods include things like t-shirts, like cup holders, and that definition is included in our definitional section. The wholesale delivery license would be allowed to deliver finished marijuana products acquired from marijuana establishments with which they have a wholesale agreement. And wholesale agreement is defined within the regulation, but I think that it's a generally accepted term that has applied prior to the suggestions, the recommendations that are made in this draft, generally applying to marijuana establishments. We do define it here. To deliver marijuana accessories and branded goods, which may come from either the wholesale delivery licensee or from marijuana establishments from which products are wholesaled. They're allowed to warehouse finished marijuana products and to white label, and that white labeling we'll get into a little bit further, but that can happen either in-house at the wholesale delivery licensee's warehouse, or it can be by virtue of the wholesale agreement. It can be outsourced to the cultivator, product manufacturer, microbusiness, or craft marijuana cooperative who the WDL would be wholesaling from, and they can do that by labeling on behalf of the wholesale delivery licensee, and we have the operational requirements are included directly in the regulations. I'll stop here in case anyone has any questions or wants to talk about anything at this point.
Thank you, Commissioner Broad. Any questions before she continues? Go ahead, Commissioner McBride, please.
Next slide, please. Oh, actually, and I'm sorry, there's a couple more things I just wanted to address. I apologize before we go on from here. So in talking about allowing delivery of finished marijuana products, what we're including there are individually packaged and labeled containers of finished marijuana also, in addition to actual finished products. And the other piece that I want to raise here, I didn't include on the slide, but is clearly a very important point, is that within this draft, we are recommending that we're not classifying either license type as a retail license, but we're clarifying that under our control regulations, a licensee may hold up to a combined 3 delivery licenses and or retail licenses. And we are looking at 935 CMR 500.0501B1 for our authority to do so. So what that means is that a licensee could have 3 wholesale licenses, 3 limited delivery, 3 wholesale or 3 limited delivery or 3 retail, or 3 a combination of the above. And our reasoning for it not being retail is first that the commission is authorized under Chapter 94G Section 4 to establish license types in addition to a retailer, a cultivator, product manufacturer, and craft marijuana cooperative, including a delivery license that is not associated with a retailer. And so that's what we are doing here. And why are we putting in the control limits? I think we talked about that at our last policy meeting, but it's because it's really been this commission's consistent position that we will defend against a small number of licensees dominating and controlling the Commonwealth's market. And so that is what we are trying to do here with those limitations. So I just wanted to put that out there and get that out for discussion in the event that we want to talk about that further, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
So moving on from there, I apologize, Eric, I keep going back and forth. Can we go to the fee slide? Thank you. So in our recommendations, we established fees for licenses, and those fees are set out here. So it is the standard $1,500 application fee. And then for a limited delivery license, we're recommending a $5,000 license fee. And for a wholesale delivery license, we're recommending a $10,000 license fee. But what we are also recommending is 100% waiver of both the application and licensing fees in the first year for limited delivery licensees, and 50% reduction in the second and subsequent years for those LDLs that are subject to exclusivity. And the reason that we're doing that is because we really, through this license, the entire purpose of the limited delivery license was to try to create a pathway that included lower barriers to entry. And by providing for this waiver, we really want to foster those lower barriers and create opportunities as a priority with this license. So we are suggesting that the commission strongly consider granting that waiver in the first year.
Commissioner McBride, if I could, I'm pretty sure I know the answer to this question, but I presume these fees have been vetted by our Chief Financial Officer?
They have been, yes.
Thank you.
Next slide, please. So under the wholesale delivery license, there's a requirement that licensees warehouse. It applies the security requirements that we have under 500.110 for other marijuana establishments to warehouses, and it applies the storage requirements that are currently included in 500.105.11 on product storage to these warehouses. So the warehouses would essentially be the base of operations for a wholesale delivery licensee. It would be where product is stored, and it would be treated as any other premises of any other marijuana establishment would be treated. Next slide, please.
Can I just pause, Commissioners Title or Flanagan, any questions or comments thus far? Go ahead, please, Commissioner McBride.
Next slide, please. So we also allow for wholesale delivery licensees to white label, either for themselves or by contracting, as I said before, with a marijuana establishment from which they're wholesaling from, and that they be able to white label on their behalf. So I just want to read into the record the definition of white labeling. White labeling means to affix a product label that includes the branding, including the name and logo of a specific marijuana establishment licensee to a finished marijuana product that was previously produced and packaged by a licensed product manufacturer, cultivator, microbusiness, or craft marijuana cooperative for sale to consumers. Vaporizer devices shall not be white labeled. White labeled products shall be required to comply with 935 CMR 500.1306. Product database and 935 CMR 500.1467 on white labeling. And then I also have an additional amendment to that to include an explicit requirement that our product labeling and packaging also be complied with as part of the definition. That's marbled through the regulations already, but I just want to make it explicit in the definition that it would apply there as well. So what we would require here would be new plans to comply with white labeling as part of the provisional licensure process. But we also want to acknowledge off the bat that some businesses may not know at the point of application whether they will white label or not, and where the white labeling is going to happen. And so we have provided a process to ensure that they can make that decision at a later point. And ensure compliance for late submitted plans that would allow for the executive director to look at those plans and determine whether they are compliant without actually giving an approval, but looking at the compliance of the plans. It requires, as part of the wholesale agreement, that there be a term indicating whether the marijuana establishment wholesaling the finished marijuana product will be performing the white labeling, or whether it's going to be the wholesale delivery licensee. And finally, we prohibit or suggest prohibiting white labeling vapes at this point in time. And the reason for that is that we need certainty when it comes to vaping, particularly at this juncture in time. We're in the process of implementing a host of new comprehensive regulations that aim at increasing transparency and requiring acquisition of knowledge about the component parts of marijuana vaporizer devices. And so allowing white labeling, we think at this point in time, really would confuse what is already a worthwhile but complex endeavor that the Commission's engaging in. And so it's our recommendation at this juncture that vapes not be able to be white labeled. Any questions?
No, keep going, Commissioner McBride. Thank you.
Next slide, please. So we also establish additional operating requirements for wholesale delivery licensees that mirror the additional operating requirements for retailers. And this includes things like limitations on sales, unauthorized sales and the right to refuse sales or delivery, recording of sales, consumer education, testing, just the requirement that any product that's sold comply with our testing requirements. And then in addition, compliance with our product database and also with the vendor sample regulations that we have just started considering in this most recent round of regulations. Next slide, please. So we don't make many substantive changes with regard to the limited delivery licensee. And so really the edits that we're making here are for consistency and to clarify processes that have been raised as needing clarification through comment periods. Next slide, please. And so understanding that there's going to be some question on the part of applicants who have been pre-certified, we did build in a provision that automatically converts existing pre-certified delivery only applicants to limited delivery applicants if these suggestions are adopted and when they go into effect. For the wholesale delivery licensees, that process would be different and it would start anew because that is it's a new license type and there are other additional requirements that would be included there, including things like the white labeling requirement and the fact that a warehouse would have to be compliant with our regulations. So existing pre-certified applicants who want to continue on the track of applying for a limited delivery license though would just be converted automatically. And I think that's the last slide. Is that right?
I believe so. Okay. I want to thank you very much, Commissioner McBride. I'd like to suggest, if it's possible, before we begin the discussion and any proposed motions that my fellow commissioners might have, that Commissioner McBride, maybe we should introduce your motions and discuss them, vote on them, and then we will have a basis of kind of an up-to-date proposed set of draft regulations that we can then discuss and again discuss motions on. Would you be comfortable introducing your motions at this time, Commissioner McBride?
Sure.
I have copies. We've circulated them to Commissioners Title and Flanagan. I hope you've received them because they're a little dense. And Commissioner McBride, I'm happy to read them, or would you prefer? It's totally your choice.
I'm happy to read them.
Please, that'd be great. Thank you. Commissioners McBride and Flanagan, could you just let me know affirmatively that you've received text of these proposed motions, just because they're a little bit complex? Okay, my apologies for getting them to you so late, but you know, I thought it'd be hard to go through this conversation without having the verbiage in front of you. So thanks, Commissioner McBride. Please go ahead.
So the language of it might be a little bit dense, but I hope that the concepts are pretty straightforward on them. So the first two are on definitions, and the first one is I move that the definition of marijuana wholesale delivery license as it appears in the draft of 935 CMR 500.002 be amended by inserting after the word consumers the words "but shall not operate a storefront." So what this would do would be to insert that to insert that they can sell and deliver finished marijuana products directly to consumers, but shall not operate a storefront. This is consistent with other definitions that we have, and it's just a clarifying amendment.
Okay. Great. Are there any questions, comments, Commissioner Title?
Wouldn't that imply that someone who owns a retail storefront couldn't own one of these licenses?
I don't think.
I think it could maybe be read that way.
Well, because it's a different, I mean, it's under this type of license. It's a specified license, right? It's a marijuana wholesale delivery license. Can't operate a storefront. It's not incorporating in there any other license that might be held by the same individual.
Could we maybe just add that, like, shall not operate a storefront
Under this license?
Under this license type.
But if it's delivery only, isn't it just implied you can't have a storefront? I guess I don't know why we're adding to it.
So this is just for marijuana wholesale delivery?
Yeah, so the way it reads would say a delivery license can't hold a storefront.
But they can under a separate license, right? That's all I'm trying to clarify.
Right, but you wouldn't confuse the two licenses. Your license type comes under a regulation number.
Commissioner McBride, what are your thoughts?
I mean, I think I'm fine with the amendment. I think that it's clear because it's under this license type that it doesn't refer to other things that you might be able to do under other licenses that you hold. It's narrowed to this license type, but if I'm okay with the amendment as a clarifying amendment. So I'm sort of agnostic on it.
Okay. Well, let's put it on the table. So, Commissioner McBride, would you mind making the motion, adding the clarifying language that was requested by Commissioner Title?
Sure. So I move that the definition of marijuana wholesale delivery license as it appears in the draft of 935 CMR 500.002 be amended by inserting after the word consumers the words "but shall not operate a storefront under this license."
Thank you, Commissioner McBride. Can I have a second to that motion, please?
Second.
Was that Commissioner Title?
Yes.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner McBride made the motion, seconded by Commissioner Title. Commissioner Flanagan, your vote.
Aye.
Commissioner McBride.
Aye.
Commissioner Title.
Aye.
Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show the commission unanimously approved the motion. Thank you very much. Commissioner McBride, your next motion, please.
So the second is to amend the definition of white labeling by inserting the references to our labeling and our packaging requirements under our operational requirements. So I move that the definition of white labeling as it appears in the draft of 935 CMR 500.002 be amended by inserting after the words "comply with" the following words: 935 CMR 500.1055, labeling of marijuana and marijuana products; 935 CMR 500.1056, packaging of marijuana and marijuana products. So the way that the definition would read would be as it reads now, only adding prior to 935 CMR 500.130, it would add those two references to our operational requirements.
Okay. And the lodge just this completeness. Do you have anything else you'd like to add about the rationale for this before I ask for comments in a motion?
Now, just reference what I said previously, which is that these there's no mystery about having to comply with these requirements. If you look at the draft regulations, it's included at several junctures within the draft regulations as it pertains to white labeling, but it's just to make sure that, you know, as a definition that we are including these explicitly as provisions of our regulations that this activity would have to comply with, licensee would have to comply with.
Thank you, Commissioner McBride. Before I ask her to formally make that motion, Commissioners Title or Flanagan, any questions or comments? And Commissioner McBride, would you formally make the motion, please?
There's no addition.
Pardon?
Can I just say so moved? I
Yeah.
think I already read it. Is it okay?
That's fine. I just want to make sure that it's explicit. So thank you, Commissioner McBride. Can I have a second to the motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show Commissioner McBride made the motion, seconded by Commissioner Flanagan. Commissioner Flanagan, your vote.
Aye.
Commissioner McBride.
Aye.
Commissioner Title. You're on mute, Commissioner Title.
Sorry, aye.
Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show that the commission unanimously approved the motion. Thank you very much. Commissioner McBride, your next motion, please.
So the next motion pertains to section 935 CMR 500.105, and it's 5A10 and 5B18. And what both of these motions would do would be to strike out the term delivery agreement, which is the last two words in those paragraphs, each of those paragraphs, and insert instead wholesale agreement. This is this was an oversight when going through the draft. It should have been fixed to read wholesale agreement, and that is what makes sense in this context as opposed to delivery agreement. So this is a fix to ensure that it reflects the correct agreement.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments before I ask for a second to the motion? Okay, so
I think, Mr. Chair, I think I need to read both motions first. Sorry.
Okay, fine, go ahead.
So move that 935 CMR 500.105 5A10 in the draft regulations be amended by striking out the final two words delivery agreement and inserting in place thereof the following words wholesale agreement. That's the first motion.
Let's deal with them separately. So can I have a second of that motion, please?
Second,
Thank you. Let the record show Commissioner McBride made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Title. Commissioner Flanagan, your vote.
Aye.
Commissioner McBride.
Aye.
Commissioner Title.
aye.
Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show the commission unanimously approved the motion. Commissioner McBride, if you would make the second motion, please.
I move that 935 CMR 500.105 5B18, as included in the draft regulations, be amended by striking out the final two words delivery agreement and inserting in place thereof the following words wholesale agreement.
Thank you. Any questions or comments before I ask for a second? Then could I ask please for a second of Commissioner McBride's motion?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner McBride made the motion, seconded by Commissioner Flanagan. Commissioner Flanagan, your vote.
Aye.
Commissioner McBride.
Aye.
Commissioner Title.
Aye.
Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show that the commission unanimously approved the motion. Thank you very much. Your next motion, please, Commissioner McBride.
So the next motion is on 935 CMR 500.145 5, and it's wholesale delivery licensee consumer age verification. This is a similar fix to the fix that was just made. It references the wrong type of agreement and references the wrong marijuana establishment. So I apologize for that. This is an oversight. The motion is that subsection 5 of 935 CMR 500.145, as included in the draft regulations, be amended by striking out clause A in its entirety and replacing it with the following clause. And this has all the fixes in it.
Okay.
A wholesale delivery licensee shall require any consumer making a purchase or delivery to have the valid government issued identification card a consumer intends to use to verify her or his age at the time of delivery examined and authenticated by the wholesale delivery licensee prior to the first individual order.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Any comments you want to make on that, Commissioner McBride, before I ask for questions and second?
No, you know, the impetus for having to make this change is that the a lot of the additional operational requirements were lifted from the retail section. And so some
Right.
of the terminology, right, when we were going through, wasn't fixed as adequately as it should have been. And so in going back through it in the last couple of days, I'm just trying to identify where we made errors like this that would lead to confusion and ultimately is not what we intended in the regulation.
Okay. Thank you very much, Commissioner McBride. Any questions or comments before I ask for a second of Commissioner McBride's motion? Then could I have a second, please, of Commissioner McBride's motion?
Second.
Thank you. Let's record show Commissioner McBride made the motion, seconded by Commissioner Title. Commissioner Flanagan, your vote.
Aye.
Commissioner McBride.
Aye.
Commissioner Title.
Aye.
Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show the commission unanimously approved the motion. Thank you. I believe you have one more motion. Is that correct, Commissioner McBride?
I have one more substantive, and then I just have a correction motion.
Okay. So go ahead.
Okay. So this is a motion on white labeling, 935 CMR 500.146(7). And so what this would do would be to require the marijuana establishment that would be engaging in white labeling to notify us if they're going to start engaging in white labeling after the licensure process, so they can opt to do that. And they would be required to notify us, and then we would give them authorization to proceed with the white labeling. And it's essentially just so that we know, because there are a host of regulations that we, for compliance purposes, need to know if there is white labeling occurring, because we want to make sure that there's compliance going on there. It just allows for there to be communication between the marijuana establishment and the commission, and for us to understand that they are engaging in that process. And it also tries to wrap it up and say that for white labeling, that marijuana establishments can take advantage of our optional packaging and labeling pre-approval, which we approved in this round of regulations and voted on back in August. And that appears in 935 CMR 500.105(7). And you'll just recollect that what we did was we took our pre-approval process and essentially fleshed it out and actually put some substance into it and a process for us to undertake. So it just connects those two ideas and enables marijuana establishments, wholesale delivery licensees to take advantage of that pre-approval process here. Okay. So the motion, I move that subsection 7 be amended by adding at the end of subclause B the following sentence: a licensee shall obtain the written authorization of the commission prior to commencing white labeling. And further, that subsection 7 be amended by adding a new subclause as follows: C, the wholesale delivery licensee may submit the label to be used for white labeling to the commission in accordance with 935 CMR 500.105(7), packaging and labeling pre-approval.
Thank you, Commissioner McBride. Any questions or comments before I ask for a second of Commissioner McBride's motion? Then could I have a second, please, of Commissioner McBride's motion?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Title. Let the record show that Commissioner McBride made the motion, seconded by Commissioner Title. Commissioner Flanagan, your vote.
Aye.
Commissioner McBride.
Aye.
Commissioner Title.
Aye.
Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show the commission unanimously approved the motion. Commissioner McBride, you said you had one small change to make a motion about. Please go ahead.
One slight change. So I move that 935 CMR 500.1013H, additional specific requirements, be amended in number 5 by striking out subclause G and inserting in place thereof subclause H. So all this does is it makes sure that it reflects the correct section. So right now it's stated as 103.1G and it should be 103.1H. It would be referring to the wrong section of 103 if this wasn't changed.
Thank you for catching that. Should we have a substantive conversation about this motion? Then could I ask please for a second of Commissioner McBride's motion?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner McBride made the motion, seconded by Commissioner Title. Commissioner Flanagan, your vote.
Aye.
Commissioner McBride.
Aye.
Commissioner Title?
Aye.
Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show the commission unanimously approved the motion. Thank you very much, Commissioner McBride. That is the extent of the motions you wish to make at this point in time.
Yes, thank you.
Great, thank you very much for that. So my intent would be to ask for a vote on the draft regulations as submitted by Commissioner McBride, subject to all of the motions that were just discussed and approved. But certainly before I ask for that vote, I want to open the floor to my fellow commissioners for any questions, comments, or suggested motions they have on the entirety of the draft. Commissioner Title?
I have a few things, not much. I want to echo all of the praise for Commissioner McBride and her writing group. I think they did a really great job putting all of the policy decisions into the draft and then pretty much thinking of everything and catching a lot of things that we didn't even talk about. So I think the draft is really, really good. I have a few things that are mostly related to clarity. So the most important thing is I don't like the names of the licenses. And the main reason is that I'm concerned that we really need the cooperation of other stakeholders that are extremely busy and overwhelmed right now. And I think it could be as simple as like they see the name wholesale delivery license and they don't know what that means and they get overwhelmed and they don't want to deal with it. I think that's like a real thing that's happening. So I think we have to make this as clear as possible. And I would recommend that we just, instead of saying wholesale, because that brings up questions that aren't immediately answered, that we just call the wholesale version a delivery operator license. And then we make it clear what you can do with it. And then for what's currently called a limited delivery license, I really like the term courier that came from the public, but I think it's sticky and I think it gets across what the license actually is. So I'm not stuck to those two suggestions, but I would really like to change wholesale just because I think it brings up a lot of confusion.
Let me ask comments on that. Commissioner, obviously just a little bit, but I'd be interested in your comments, Commissioner, as well. Commissioner McBride?
So the suggestion of delivery licensee was made because that's what they're doing. And so I feel like it is a pretty clear indication of what the licensee is doing. So, you know, I'll to quote Shakespeare, "A rose by any other name, still a rose," right? So I don't, you know, it's kind of I'm not gonna I'll just be agnostic, but I feel like wholesale delivery licensee tells you what it's doing, and I feel like limited delivery licensee, you know, kind of tells you that there's a limitation there. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Commissioner McBride. Commissioner Feigin, any comments on Commissioner Title's suggestion?
I honestly don't have a problem with the titles of these licenses. I think really the only people that are going to know that are the people that hold the licenses, not the general public. So they have a right to know whether or not they're wholesaling or they're just being the delivery service.
Commissioner Title, how would you like to proceed? You want to make a motion or you want to move on? Your call.
Well, maybe I could just be a little more clear about the concern that I'm picturing. So I'm specifically picturing municipalities that are trying to decide if they want to add this as a new license type, right? Because we won't be able to implement any of this if we don't have cooperation from them. And also the term wholesaling, in my experience, typically if you use it as a verb, you're talking about the manufacturer or the cultivator that is selling to the retailer versus, in this case, it's more like the retailer that is selling to the consumer. So that's why I think having the word wholesale in it is implying that they are participating in an activity that they're not participating in.
Well, I think a lot of, I think that there is some thoughtfulness that needs to go into this, because if the commission ultimately decides to adopt the recommendation of not specifically defining this license as a retail license, but still allowing for the our authority under 0501B to apply here, I think that it does require some thoughtfulness about how we are, what we're calling it and how we're treating it. So I guess I would ask the commission to consider that. I think being thoughtful about our terminology here is important. But at the end of the day, if this isn't a hill that I'm going to die on, what we call it.
Okay. So, Commissioner, I think the best course of action, if you're comfortable, if you choose to make a motion, and my preference, if it's okay with you, is to make two separate motions if you're so interested, one for each category of license.
Okay. So I'll make the first one. I just want to note that I just Googled wholesale, and the first definition is to sell something in quantity, usually for resale. And the second is to sell things in bulk, usually to someone who is going to sell it again at a higher retail price. So with that in mind, I would like to move to change the wholesale delivery license to be named delivery operator license.
Thank you, Commissioner Title. Can I have a second, please, of that motion?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show Commissioner Title made the motion, seconded by Commissioner Flanagan. Commissioner Flanagan, your vote?
No.
Commissioner McBride?
No.
Commissioner Title?
Aye.
Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show that the commission voted 2 in favor of the motion, Commissioners Title and Hoffman, 2 opposed, Commissioners McBride and Flanagan, so the motion does not carry. Commissioner Title, would you like to make a second motion?
I guess not, but I'll just point out that in California, they call it a non-storefront license, I think. So I'm open to that as well. I don't think it's like a very simple name, but if we want to call it something besides delivery, non-storefront might be better than wholesale. And I guess, people can just discuss it in public comment, but I think this is going to be an issue for municipalities because they're not, what I've learned over the past 3 years, especially talking about equity and economic empowerment all the time, is that people are not watching our meetings, people are not reading our materials, and so they do depend on what something is called to understand it. And if we call it a wholesale license and they're not wholesaling, I think that's a problem.
Yeah. I understand the point. I guess I'm comforted. I agree with your point, but I'm comforted by the fact that it's not called a wholesale license; it's called a wholesale delivery license. And so I do think that distinction is clear. I did support your motion as you just heard, but I am comforted by the fact that delivery is in the name of that license.
Can I make a similar motion for the definition then?
Sure.
Okay, so the definition, let me just pull it up. Okay, so the definition is marijuana wholesale delivery license or wholesale delivery license means an entity authorized to wholesale and warehouse finished marijuana products acquired from a marijuana cultivator, marijuana product manufacturer, micro business, or craft marijuana cooperative. So I know that we have defined wholesale in our definitions as a transaction between 2 marijuana establishments, but I would move that we clarify this definition to marijuana wholesale license means marijuana wholesale delivery license means an entity authorized to purchase finished marijuana products from a marijuana cultivator, marijuana product manufacturer, micro business, or craft marijuana product and sell and deliver them directly to consumers. So it would just be changing the verb wholesale to the word purchase.
And Commissioner McBride, your thoughts?
I think that I'm fine with that change, but I guess I'm a little bit confused about why. I guess I'd like to hear a little bit more from Commissioner Title about why there's concern about using the word wholesaling, because in each of the conversations that I've had, and I've been involved with others and on the other commissioners in having with individuals, the point that's been made is that companies be allowed to wholesale, that they be allowed to purchase, to do exactly actually what the definition of wholesaling I think is, and maybe I'm misunderstanding it, but it's to purchase directly from a cultivator or product manufacturer in bulk, and to be able to then sell them, right? To resell it. So I'm confused about. If I could be educated a little bit about like what the concerns are calling it wholesaling, if it's just about how it's going to be treated for purposes of municipal permitting, or if there's kind of a larger issue that I'm missing.
Can I just offer something, Commissioner Title? I'm sorry for jumping in, but to me, I think the confusion here is that there's two ways to use the word wholesale. So what we're talking about here for what we now currently refer to as the wholesale delivery license is purchasing at wholesale, to distinguish from the courier license where they're purchasing, or they're not purchasing, but they're delivering from retail. But so what we're talking about is purchasing at wholesale. When we use the word wholesale, though, without saying purchasing at wholesale, we just say wholesaling. That to me implies that you are selling to retailers. And so to me, that's where I think the potential confusion lies. What we are authorizing is allowing somebody to purchase at wholesale, not to sell at wholesale to a retailer. Does that make sense to you, Commissioner McBride?
Yes.
Commissioner Title, does that address the concern that you've been raising?
Yes.
So can we put some language in that would reflect that, Commissioner McBride? Would you be comfortable with that?
Sure. So marijuana wholesale delivery license means an entity authorized to purchase at wholesale.
Yeah.
And warehouse finished marijuana products.
Commissioner Title, you okay with that?
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Flanagan, are you okay? Can I ask for without further discussion, can I ask for a motion?
So moved.
Okay. Who made that? I'm sorry. Your face is okay. Thank you. Let the record show the Commissioner Title made the motion. Could I have a second to that motion, please?
Second.
Let the record show the Commissioner Title made the motion, seconded by Commissioner McBride. Commissioner Flanagan, your vote?
Aye.
Commissioner McBride?
Aye.
Commissioner Title?
Aye.
Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show the Commission unanimously approved the motion. Thank you. The floor is still yours, Commissioner Title. Please keep going.
Okay. This is not a substantive change. The control limitations, I thought the group did an excellent job making it really clear what the control limitations are, and also whether or not it's considered a retailer. So I very much appreciate that. I just wanted to suggest that we put the language about control limitations that says no person or entity having direct or indirect control in a marijuana retailer license shall obtain or be granted more than a combined total of 3 marijuana retailer licenses and or wholesale delivery licenses into the control/limitations section 500.0501B.
Commissioner McBride?
I'm fine with that.
Great. Commissioner Flanagan, any comments before I ask for a motion? Then Commissioner Tyler, would you mind please stating your request in a motion, please?
Move to add to section 935 CMR 500.0501B, no person or entity having direct or indirect control in a marijuana retailer license shall obtain or be granted more than a combined total of 3 marijuana retailer licenses and/or wholesale delivery licenses.
Thank you. Can I have a second to that motion, please?
Second.
Let the record show that the Commissioner Connell made the motion, seconded by Commissioner McBride. Commissioner Flanagan, your vote.
Aye.
Commissioner McBride.
Aye.
Commissioner Title.
Aye.
Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show the Commission unanimously approved the motion. Thank you very much. Please keep going, Commissioner Title.
Okay, under the additional requirements for delivery applicants, we ask for information and documentation regarding any agreements with third-party technology platforms. And I thought that was a really good and important catch to add. My question is, what's the rationale for saying information and documentation regarding agreements rather than just agreements?
I think it's to anticipate that at that stage, they may not have reached agreements yet.
How would you feel about just saying agreements and information and documentation regarding any agreements?
I think I'm going to ask Mr. Potvin if he's on what he thinks about that.
Actually, I don't see him.
Okay.
Mr. Executive Director, is Mr. Potvin on, or if not, could you respond in his stead?
He's here. Kyle's here.
Oh, Kyle, I'm sorry. There's just too many people on the meeting for me to see them all on my screen. Mr. Potvin, could you make yourself visible, please?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I believe I am.
Okay, great. How are you?
Good. How are you, sir?
I'm well. So, Commissioner McBride, could you just repeat your question for Mr. Potvin?
I guess I'm going to ask Commissioner Title to repeat her suggestion.
Okay. Go ahead, Commissioner Title, please.
My suggestion was just that instead of asking for information and documentation regarding agreements with third-party technology platforms, that we ask for that plus agreements with third-party technology platforms.
I believe that's okay. I would just further, I think the rationale behind information and documentation was just probably the need for disclosure. So disclosure and agreements, I think, would be more appropriate.
Great.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Potvin.
But can I just make sure?
Please, go ahead.
I just want to be, I want to be really clear that at provisional licensure, applicants may not have entered into agreements yet. We all understand that between provisional licensure and final licensure, there's a period of time where applicants are, and like licensees, right, provisional licensees are building what they need in order to obtain final licensure, and there may be aspects that they're not prepared with at application, and I think that we are okay with that because we understand that sometimes they need to have the provisional license or they need to have some certainty, right, before they're investing the time and the resources and then getting the third-party agreement and other types of agreements as well, right? I mean, we've kind of had this discussion a lot, and this has been reflected in a lot of public comment that, are how realistic are some of our timelines. So I just want to be really careful with the wording here that we're not pinning people down to having to show us something that they may not yet have attained, and that would be okay if they hadn't yet attained it.
Commissioner Title?
I completely agree. That's a good point. I think we could just add, if applicable, to that part, to just point out that you don't necessarily need to have it. But that's actually a good segue into what I was going to say next, which is that I would like to see, I don't know if everyone agrees, but I would like to see the agreements, if they are signed, by pre-certification, because not because they have to have them, but just because I think it would be good for us to keep a handle on what's being signed and at what stage. So I was going to suggest next that, if applicable, the agreements be submitted as part of the pre-certification as well.
Yeah. I guess my question to you, Commissioner Title, how does that relate to our decision to approve pre-certification?
It doesn't. It's a matter of disclosure. So in other words, I don't think that you definitely don't need the agreement to get pre-certification, but
Correct.
if you have signed an agreement and you're at the pre-certification stage, I think that would be useful information for us to have.
But I guess I'm going to push back again. So go ahead, Commissioner Flanagan.
Mr. Chairman, if they have the agreement before at pre-certification, would it be in the portal that we can just look at it? Or is that something that they don't need to upload? Then maybe that's a question for Kyle.
Mr. Poppin, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Currently, we ask for, in the regulations, we ask for third-party technology platform agreements in the provisional license application, the second phase, and not during the pre-certification phase. The rationale behind that is that, like Commissioner McBride stated, it's very rare for somebody to already have these agreements at that first stage, and even at the second stage. But I think it's critical information for the commission to have to vote on prior to provisional licensure. So I think having it be something that is required and not adding an additional requirement at that first stage and having it just at the second stage just kind of balances the amount of requirements in each stage. Because during the first stage, there's a lot of standard operating procedures that people have to submit. And I think adding another requirement to that first stage would just make it a little bit more lopsided.
Thank you, Mr. Poppin. Yeah, I'm kind of loath to ask for something that is not necessary, and is not necessary for pre-certification. I'm certainly completely behind ensuring that everything is disclosed to us, and that certainly before we vote on a provisional license, everything is disclosed to us. But I don't feel comfortable asking for something in a phase that's not necessary for our decision in that phase.
Okay. So just let me just wrap that up, and then I'll go back
Sure.
to the if applicable thing. So
Sure.
just to be clear, there are a lot of protections in our regulations with regard to control by third-party technology platforms. So that's the concern. So that's kind of why I was raising it. But I think that having the agreement by provisional rather than pre-certification is fine. So, okay, so I move to add, let's see, this is page 51. Okay, to number 3, as part of the provisional license application, information and documentation regarding any agreements and agreements, if applicable, with third-party technology platforms pursuant to 935 CMR 500.1451D and E.
Thank you, Commissioner Title. Any comments or questions for us for a second on that motion? And then could I have a second, please, on that motion?
Second.
At the record, the Commissioner Title made the motion, seconded by Commissioner McBride. Commissioner Flanagan, your vote.
No.
Commissioner McBride.
Aye.
Commissioner Title.
Aye.
Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show that the commission approved the motion by a vote of 3 in favor. Commissioners McBride, Title, and Hoffman voting yay. Commissioner Flanagan voting no. Thank you very much. Commissioner Title, still your floor.
Okay. This may just be a note for the record, but on page 126, it notes that topicals and ointments shall not be subject to a limitation on daily sales for adult use. And this isn't related to delivery, but because it's a new section, I just wanted to raise it. A patient had mentioned during public comment that we don't subject topicals and ointments to limits under adult use, but we do under medical. And that struck me as an oversight because I don't remember talking about it. So I guess I just wanted to bring up for the record if anyone else has thoughts on that.
Any comments?
Sorry, I'm trying to get to the.
Pardon?
I'm trying to get to the section.
Okay. Take your time.
It's page 126.
Commissioner Tuttle, can you say what your concern is again?
So I think this is just copied from elsewhere. It says topicals and ointments shall not be subject to a limitation on daily sales. And I believe it's an oversight that topicals and ointments are subject to limitations under medical regulations.
Can I ask the executive director if you have any thoughts on this? As Commissioner McBride's looking this up, Mr. Executive Director.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My suspicion is this relates to the 60-day supply limit in a patient context versus which is tracked based on purchase, and any transaction needs to be allotted against that 60-day supply, which is the 10-ounce limitation on average. Obviously, there's some flexibility with the provider to set a different amount, but that's my suspicion as to where this originates. And then on the adult use side, as Commissioner Tuttle indicated, there is not that same limitation. So that's my gut reaction to why there might be a difference there, but that's I guess the best I can do at this point.
Okay, thank you. I think that's helpful. Commissioner McBride, have you had a chance to look at this?
I have, yeah. I mean, this was lifted from the retail requirements. I agree with the executive director's assessment.
Okay, thank you. So Commissioner Tuttle, you comfortable with that? With given what the executive director said, or?
Well, like I said, I think this is just a note for the record that we can't deal with it now, but I just wanted to raise it because I do think it's inconsistent to suggest that it should be counted toward the 60-day medical supply, but not towards an adult possession limit.
Okay, so noted. Thank you for raising it. We'll make sure it's part of a future agenda to discuss it, but I agree with you that that was not probably the opportune moment to do so.
Okay. This is a question next that I have on page 127. This is just a question for Commissioner McBride. Number 4, recording sales D. I was just wondering if you could explain more about where this came from, because I support it and it's really specific, but it seems to be aimed at something and I don't know what. So I'll read it. A wholesale delivery licensee shall conduct a monthly analysis of its equipment and sales data to determine that no software has been installed that could be utilized to manipulate or alter sales data, and that no other methodology has been employed to manipulate or alter sales data.
So this was adopted as part of the delivery only regulations that we did last year. So it's just reflecting what we had already adopted as a matter of policy in the delivery only context and making it consistent. So that, that's where it came from. I have to go back to our discussion last year to look at the origins of it. Although I think that it does it does get at, right, potentially relationships, and I think maybe fidelity to our regulations when we bring in third-party platforms.
Thank you. Okay, that's helpful. Appreciate that. Let's see. Okay, so the last thing is just repackaging and white labeling. And I don't have a suggestion, and I was not able to come to a conclusion, but I just wanted to register what my discomfort is at this point before public comment.
Sure.
In the last meeting, I said I was neutral, or I was hesitant about white labeling, and I couldn't quite articulate why, and it helped a lot to have the draft in front of me. What it is the idea that we can have one identical product that's being manufactured or cultivated, and then have multiple retailers or delivery operators branding them in different ways, and then potentially selling more or pricing it differently just based solely on the branding. And I don't have that problem, of course, with like the t-shirts and that sort of thing. But when it's the same product and it's a drug, I have some discomfort. So I wanted to put that out there for public comment and see if, people who research these issues have concerns, and then come back to it.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, Commissioner Title?
No, thanks.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Commissioner Flanagan, any questions or topics that you'd like to raise?
No, I would just like to thank Commissioner McBride for all her work on this. I think that it was an enormous task in a short amount of time. So her and the writing team did a great job.
Thank you very much. Commissioner McBride, when you get done blushing, is there anything else that you would like to add to this conversation before I ask for a motion?
No, I mean, I appreciate the comments on this from the commissioners for sure. And again, I just want to reiterate the work that went into this, by me, but also certainly by the writing team, and again, express my appreciation to them for their work. So, I expect we're going to get a lot of comments on this, and I look forward to receiving those comments. This is a first in the nation endeavor, I think, in terms of setting it up this way. So I'm sure that, there will be a lot of ideas shared with us over the course of the next few weeks, and I look forward to that.
I would be hugely disappointed if it was otherwise. Mr. Executive Director, before I ask for a motion, any concerns or issues that you want to make sure we address before I do ask for a motion?
Nope, good on my end. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Then please could I ask for a motion to approve the draft regulations subject to all of the conditions that were approved in our conversation today? Could I have such a motion, please?
So moved.
Thank you. Can I have a second, please?
Second.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner McBride made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Title. Commissioner Flanagan, your vote?
Aye.
Commissioner McBride?
Aye.
Commissioner Title?
Aye.
Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show the commission unanimously approved the motion. Thank you very much. Let me go through the upcoming calendar, and then I will ask for a motion to adjourn. So, Erica, if you could put up that slide, please. Thank you. So here's our upcoming meetings. We have a regular commission meeting on October 8th to discuss our regular business, which will include, I've been informed by our executive director, a large number of provisional, final, and renewals, provisional and final licenses and renewals. That's on October 8th. On October 20th, and I apologize if I misstated this in my opening comments, but on October 20th, we will meet to discuss feedback we received from the public comment period on our delivery regulations that we just voted on, and we will discuss whether we need to make any changes to those draft regulations based upon the public comment. And then on October 29th, we will vote on all of the final regulations, including the delivery regulations. So that's the upcoming calendar. My thanks, as always, to Erica for organizing these meetings and then making sure they run well and that we're all prepared for them. My thanks to all of the staff who work hard to make sure that we are set for these meetings. My thanks to my fellow commissioners for what is always a productive and constructive conversation. So thank you. I'm very pleased with where we ended up today. There being no further business before the commission, may I ask please for a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second, let the record show you beat Commissioner Flanagan to the punch there. Let the record show that Commissioner McBride.
She deserves it.
Fair enough. I agree with that. Let the record show that Commissioner McBride made the motion to adjourn, seconded by Commissioner Flanagan. Commissioner Flanagan, your vote?
Aye.
Commissioner McBride?
Aye.
Commissioner Title?
Aye.
Commissioner Hoffman. Let the record show that the commission unanimously voted to adjourn at 11:15 a.m. on the 24th of September 2020. We are adjourned. Thank you very much, and everybody be safe.